Hello and welcome to another episode of Can't Stop the Growth. I'm your host, Chad Peterman, and today I have a good friend of mine on the podcast who is going to be a wealth of knowledge. He and I have bounced many ideas off of one another and continue to do so. So without further ado, we'd like to welcome President and CEO of Eco Plumbers in Columbus, Ohio, Aaron Gaynor. Welcome to the podcast, Aaron.
Thank you, Chad. It's great to finally get a chance to get on here. I know you and I talk a lot and text and communicate a lot of things, but thanks for the opportunity to get on here and share a little of my story and hopefully inspire or help some other people and learn something along the way myself.
Yeah, absolutely. I was sharing with another guest last week, I think, why I do this. And, it has just been a way for me to learn a ton. I'll walk away from every episode, even if I've talked to the person numerous times in the past. I always feel like our conversation leads down a path that otherwise it may not. And there's always something to grab there and or learn. So awesome stuff. Well, I guess to get started, why don't you give us kind of a rundown of how Eco Plumbers came to be and where you guys are today?
Yeah. So I'll start a little way back. I started in the trades in 1997, right out of high school. No family in the trades, so I didn't know anything about the trades at all. Actually was loading semi trucks at Value City Furniture on second shift during high school and out, and then had my good friend John Veerhoff, who's also a Nexstar member. His brother-in-law worked for Ferguson and just said, "Hey, I know a guy that wants to get some young guys in the trade." Like that was it, right? There was no schooling, nothing else. It was a first shift job. It paid about $7.25. And I was making about $14 an hour, which was good money, but that's how they trapped you into warehouse. But I said, why not? It's first shift. So I took that job, and that's how I got into the trades, just to give people that. And then from there, I ended up getting my master's plumber's license, as they call it, back then, which I think they should go back to, by the way. It sounds a lot cooler than just state license. And when I was 23 years old, and then from there, I started a plumbing company with my good friend, John. I'd say this was a total E-Myth story. Exactly. We knew how to do plumbing very well, so we should start a business. And that's what we did, right? But we sure didn't know how to manage, or we weren't understood how to be entrepreneurs at that time. So we grew a business to about $3 million, about $3.5 million roughly in new construction plumbing, right? Everything Nexstar would tell us not to do. As you see behind me now, I have worked the model behind me up on the wall there to remind me to never unwork anything other than the real model of service. But we grew that about 2006 as the market turned down. We started losing contracts in business through new construction, and we fought to try to stay alive. We lost one of our biggest contracts through Syntex Homes, which I now think has been absorbed into Pulte or something at that time. And it caused us to collapse and go into bankruptcy. So I went into a personal bankruptcy 2006 and into 2007, lost jobs for people, lost my house, my car, I lost everything. I went into personal bankruptcy. If anybody's ever been there, it's not a good place to be, and it's not fun, right? But had nothing, $0 to my name, ended up back at my mom's 2-bedroom apartment. One of them was kind of her office space, and I was sleeping on the couch. And I had a single dad at that time with a 3-year-old son. I just remember looking at him saying, "I promise this won't be your life," and got to work and started building Eco Plumbers. Borrowed $50 from my sister, opened up a bank account. My sister, my service manager, Braun, today, helped out, and we got to work, and we've been building that throughout the last 15 years from nothing to where we are today. It's taken a lot of work when you don't have any money to grow a service business. So that's been the quick story of my story all the way up to now, and then was able to connect with about 8 years ago with Mike, who's our CFO now, who's also brought a ton of value, which I know you know Chad very well too, and really helped us dial in some of our financial and our business and structure, and then joined Nexstar about 8 years ago. And also about 8 years ago, got on Service Titan. So all that kind of came together about 8 years ago. And we've been able to really take off, especially in the last 4 or 5 years, which, some of our growth the last couple of years. So yeah, that's a whole story in a quick nutshell. And I'll be happy to answer more of those questions as we go along.
For sure. And I appreciate you sharing. And I've heard the story before, but I definitely wanted to have you share that. Even for me, and you say you draw stuff. We talk shoot, once a week, if not multiple times a week. And I can tell you that knowing that you were on the schedule today, it made it a little bit easier to get out of bed, knowing the odds that you were facing and what you built today. What a tremendous story that is, and continues to be. So thank you for that. That's really awesome. One of the things, obviously, you pointed out in kind of the story, obviously the model that you work today is vastly different than the model you worked then. What would you say after you figured out the model? I think everybody's pretty clear on that. New construction goes up and down, all that, residential service. That's kind of the model that you and I subscribe to. What would you say as you guys have really taken off on a growth pattern? What would you say from a leadership perspective are some of the things that you kind of hold most dear to your heart as having learned over the last, call it 5 years or so?
Well, I think one thing is being able to just stay the course, right, with this stuff. There's always distractions. People come with, hey, there's this multi-million-dollar project, there's this, there's that, all these things. People come, even your own team come, and be able to just say no. Say no. I just had to say no to our general manager at one of our newer locations. He wanted to brought some stuff about some restoration company contract, and the guy I was working, I literally just said no. Like, no. He said, but it's hundreds of thousands of dollars. I go, no. It sounds good on paper until you have to do it. So being able to say no to that other business, which is hard because people look at you because there's real money. There is money there, right? It's just, it interferes with the actual model that you're trying to do, right? I've seen this happen, Chad, you've probably seen it and other people have. As soon as you pick up some account and everybody believes it's some multi-million-dollar account, everybody drops everything for everybody else and takes all their focus onto that account, which then destroys the model of focusing on one customer at a time every day and building a long-term relationship with the community you serve, not with one contractor that you work for. And I've seen that. And I think that's been probably one of the biggest things for me was once I flipped that switch and made that decision, to stay that course as we went. So hopefully that's answering the question in some capacity.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously there's a time and place to kind of, as you're getting a business up off the ground and, you're trying to make payroll and stuff like that. There's a time to, you're going to have to reach for, we did it, you did it, probably, there's a time someone calls and they want some work done. By God, we're going to figure out a way to make some money. And I think you make a very great point in the work the model. And there may be times where you've got to stray just to make but being very clear on what that model is. And I can tell you that when you're in a position to say no to work, regardless really of what level you're at, you should be saying no to some work, whatever that type of work is that you're not very good at. But there is no greater satisfaction than saying no, knowing that if you would have said yes, it would have been months and months of a headache.
Yeah. So I think there's a difference there. I agree. I mean, I hustle. There's a difference between when you're in hustle mode and now you're running a full out organization that has to have a framework, right? So I don't say don't take that work. If you're getting up off the ground today and you're working hard and you're trying to find, do everything you can to make ends meet to your end result, what that may be. And my end game was to get in the service business, because when I went into bankruptcy and was trying to look around, I said, who's still working? And what business we're still going. I look around, I see all the service trucks on the road and they're growing and they still have market. And then you start to read stuff. You look, it's like, man, why? Because I came from construction, right? So that's all I knew. So it was like, that was the end game. That's what I was working towards. So if you're doing those things, I would be in the mindset of, I'm doing those to help me get to my end result, which eventually I will flip to hopefully service. That's the best opportunity, I believe. Now, again, whether you're going to work whatever model you're going to work, just work it. If it's construction, work it. If it's commercial service, work it, right? Whatever it is, work that until you fully have that understood, and then move to whatever the next thing is.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad you made that point about there's a difference between hustle and then working then your actual model that you're going to continue to work. So when I would advise and actually, and it doesn't matter really what level you're at, I'm spent this morning doing an exercise that my CFO makes me do. She's probably listening, cursing me or something like that, but she makes me do that says, okay, if this is what we're going to do, when are we going to exit this piece? When are we going to enter this piece? By when? How are we going to measure it? All of these things. And I think it's just important to understand the vision, which we've talked about many a times on this podcast. But when are you going to exit hustle mode?
Mhm.
When are you going to? It's okay that your model's out there and you got to scrap and claw to get going. But when are you going to exit that? And by how are you going to measure that? When we reach this point, we're going to say no to these types of jobs, or we're going to say no to these opportunities, and we're just going to focus on these pieces of the puzzle. I think that's extremely important. And one still that I mean, heck, you said you did it this morning. When you said restoration company, I literally just a smile just went over my face. I've got a couple of buddies that work in restoration companies. They're like, "Hey, you want to take a look at some work?" I'm like, "Absolutely not. No, not in a million years."
Yeah,
And that's okay. That's just it, our models just don't coexist. They're good companies,
of
but
course.
our models would not. We would provide, and what I always tell them, I go, we would provide terrible service to you because we wouldn't we wouldn't follow your timelines. We wouldn't do anything like that because that's just not our model.
I would agree with that. I've had to say the same things. Like we just wouldn't be able to provide the level of service you expect
Yeah,
for that type of work that you're doing. It's not how we're built. We're built
yeah,
in 3 days, right? Models doing things in 3 days, not long extended projects. And I think
yeah.
that's what people have to understand. It's like, what model are you working? I think there is, again, great point difference between hustle and building a model that works long term for your business, so your team can also be aligned with you and know where to go, what to do. People are always going to bring stuff if they think it brings revenue or growth or does something, they want to bring it up, right? But it's always just reminding them and having that. And I think your point there with your CFO is like, that's just a good integrator helping you out, right? Helping people that kind of have big ideas and go. And you and I talk a lot, so we got a lot of that going on. It's like getting some people to say, hey, give us a little more clarity here of your idea, and like, when's it start and when's it end? Because like, we're like, hey, there's a big idea, let's go do this. And they're trying to get their head around like, how much money is it going to cost? How many people need to be involved? What should we allocate to this? Like those types of things. And I think those are good things for any level of leadership as you're going up, to understand how to allocate that conversation with your team, because it can come a lot more confusing to them than sometimes we think, because we've thought it through in our heads or talked to peers like ourselves many times over. We haven't talked to them nowhere near as many times about our thoughts as we have in our own heads, right? So being able to articulate that's so powerful and important.
Yeah, for sure. And a perfect segue there. When it comes to kind of that visionary integrator, if those of you that aren't familiar with the concept, it's born out of Traction. There's also another book, Rocket
Rocket
Fuel,
fuel. Yep.
yeah, which depicts the relationship between visionary and integrator. You have a really good integrator there in Mike. You two were somewhat, I don't know if I've ever told you this, but somewhat of the inspiration of allowing me to get out of the way, knowing that, hey, this integration stuff, like this probably isn't my gig. I'm not great at this, so I need to get out of the way. How would you say that between you and Mike, you guys manage your relationship, being that you're kind of running in different lanes of the business?
It's a great question. I think it's there's some really great. I think we complement each other well, right? In many ways, like um, Mike's very tactical. He gets into numbers. He looks at the company from that standpoint. Brings that. I'd say I do drive stuff. He drives stuff too, but I'd say I articulate. I communicate a message. I can speak well in front of people. Rally the team. Articulate the vision where we want to go well. We put those together very well together. I'd say that, sometimes as any group, you can see there is sometimes you get some collision, right? You're going and, you either collide a little bit on a project, or sometimes you can see a little divide of like, hey, I'm trying to do this. We go this way, and you have to bring each other back together. And I think that happens in all organizations. Be okay with that, because that's part of the process, right? And being okay with that, but constantly staying in line. We have a standing meeting every Tuesday at 6:15 a.m. So every Tuesday at 6:15 a.m. We meet, and then we have a monthly review. And then even yesterday on the holiday, on Labor Day, him and I got together for 2.5 hours to discuss like the state of eco plumbers right now. Where are we at? What do we got going on? What do we need to tackle and make sure we're clear in the next fourth quarter to set us up to stay after our 3-year picture? and evaluate that together, right? So we just used Monday just because we both were free. I'm not recommending everybody comes in on Labor Days or whatever, right? Just happened to work out for us, and we just use that as a time. And I think it's just getting together and keep communicating, keep collaborating, and staying after the strategy together is very, very important for those roles to work properly. And as we bring on more leaders, we hired 4 managers, ops manager, and 3 frontline managers in the last, let's call it 60 days. So, we need to be aligned to have that communication with them too.
Awesome. Yeah. And I think you bring up some really good points there. Have there ever been times where, here's the question I want to ask. So before Mike, obviously you probably did both. You were probably visionary and integrator to some extent. Obviously, as you get a high caliber guy like that comes on and joins the team, it's a little bit easier to step back. And as you get bigger, obviously it's easier to settle into your role. How did you navigate that? Because I think leaders are challenged with that. I know I was. How did you kind of navigate the handing of the torch, if you will, to Mike as far as some of that operational stuff? Were there any kind of pain points that you had, things that you had anxiety about as you did some of that?
Oh, it was perfect.
Yeah, I figured as much. All right, next question.
Nothing went wrong.
Yeah.
Look, I mean, let's be honest, it's hard to let go of stuff, and it still is. I love getting in the trenches. I like rolling up my sleeves and diving in with the service teams and other stuff, and I still do that because within balance, right? You got to watch within balance. You don't want to overstep boundaries in areas with people. I don't micromanage people, but I love diving in and saying, let's solve this. Like, what do we need? Like, how do we do it? Because I do have the integrator, because I'm a technician at heart, right? Like, I came from technician background. I grew up as a tradesman. I'm a plumber, right? So I technically know, like, want to get in, like, execute something, right? At the same time, I also have always had a higher level of like thinking of, I always wanted to build something, organize something, do something, right? So I get back and forth. I've taken the test of integrator and visionary, and I kind of balance in this kind of weird spot where I could do both, depending on where I'm at, like what the project is in front of me. So I'd say it's a challenge, and it still is. I mean, it's if you don't say it is, then I think you're tearing at yourself. You're not being honest with yourself sometimes, because there's times where I think, Chad, you could say things like you want to jump into certain things because you feel like you do have the answer, or you have the experience. You're also trying to balance that experience by letting someone else learn. And I just had a phone call with, I consider a great mentor of mine, Jack Tester, right before this, and we had a similar conversation still today that I still am fighting versus when do you take charge and when do you let others lead? And I think that's a great question. You have to understand the difference of the two and when to do it, right? Because at the same time, you want to let others make decisions, but as the CEO of your company, you are the ultimate decision maker. So when does it balance between others making decision and you making the permanent decision to move forward?
Yeah, I can only imagine what Jack's advice. He's some of the. I always have to have a notebook and decompress when I talk to Jack.
Same thing here.
Yeah, exactly. Because he's got a lot of and I think the reason why is maybe a part of the answer to that question, or at least getting it, probably not the answer, but getting us down is it all comes down to the questions that you ask. And as a leader that is under you, that is struggling, I think understanding where they are, where their headspace is critical, because you can keep pushing them. And I've been guilty of this, is like, the answer and you just keep pushing them and pushing them and pushing them almost to a fault. Like, yeah, I know he doesn't know the answer. Well, he's not going to get it if I just keep, almost like almost to a fault. You're just pushing him to try to figure it out, even though he's not going to get the answer. And so digging in with those questions and figuring that out, I think, is the toughest thing. And the thing that I continually work on is asking good questions of those so that they can figure it out themselves. I think that is extremely critical, but very tough to do.
Yeah, I think that self-discovery, when you're leading people, you do want to have them have self-discovery, right? But you also have to get the balance, I believe, between the unknown to the known. If they literally don't know, they don't know. Like, you can self-discover all you want, unless they're going to go out and try to educate something or do something. You have to point them in a direction sometimes too, right? So there's the balance between the two. And I think as I keep trying to grow as a leader, as I read John Maxwell and the 5 levels of leadership, like I'd love to be a level 5 leader, right? That's the goal. More leaders, right? Build more leaders, right? But at the same time, like, you do have a balance, I think, for me, at least, as we're trying to grow technicians, maybe in the manager role, or even frontline CSRs or dispatchers. Like, if they don't know, they don't know. And you're going to have to sometimes answer those questions and then let them build on what that discovery is from there. At least that's been my experience as we've tried to scale a team with a lot of our existing staff into roles, right? But I also think we're at a point where we are bringing in people from the outside, because there is a point where there's a talent gap in a few spots that you have to. I think that's the hardest part, I think, for people that grow businesses with a group of people, is you start to really get in this talent gap area where you do have to fill spots. You're also very loyal to the people that work for you, because you should be, by the way, right? But then you're in this challenging spot of filling talent gap while also growing the team you have, while bringing in other people into the organization that can help. And then building cohesiveness between them with the existing team that's helped you grow, to bringing new people into the organization, and then making sure that they collaborate correctly with their skills, and then realizing that everybody's still a great player on the team. One person just has to be the point guard, and one person's the center, and one's a shooting guard, and just realize that their skills are a little bit different, but they all bring value. And I think getting people to understand that in a scaling company with your existing infrastructure has been probably one of my bigger challenges, to be transparent. That's probably been one of mine. I don't know about you, Chad. How's that gone for you?
Perfect, right? I mean, just no, I mean, I agree 100%. And back to your point about, pointing them in the right direction. I think where I have come up short more times than not is selection of the right person. You talk about bringing people from, to try to bridge that talent gap. Hey, I just grew by, 20 technicians. I may not have a technician that can step up in the service manager role to manage. If it were 5 technicians, okay, maybe someone's there and it's not their fault. Similar to, like, if they don't know, they don't know. Well, I can't expect you to be great at leading an organization or a department that big. And I have oftentimes selected somebody who was great for the organization that we had currently, but then we added 20 technicians over a 6-month period. And then all of a sudden this guy's like underwater, like, what am I supposed to do? And you're like, yeah, I didn't pick the right person. And so we get mad at that person for not being a great manager, yet we never selected the right person in the first place.
I've never done that. Thanks for sharing that with all of us, Chad. That's really great. No, for sure. I agree, because we want to give people opportunity, and they want it. And, the only person to blame is ourselves for that at the end of the day. And we didn't do them any justice as much as we didn't do the rest of the team, even though our heart of hearts would tell us that we felt like we were doing the right thing, because we care about people and we want them to have the opportunity to grow. And sometimes, I'll be honest, that's got in the way of making the right decision sometimes.
Yeah.
It has. And I mean, that's fine. It's good to be a good person and try to help people, but also realize that, you got to watch the balance between being a good person. Because the one thing I have learned as our business has scaled is most people don't want to tell you no if you're the CEO, if you ask them, the owner, to do the bit, to do the job, right? So it's not like, hey, you want to be the service manager of this department? They're like, hell no. Like, because they all think that is the required next step in their growth, and it's not always. And I think that's something that I've recognized more over the last 2 years, and even up to today. Like, it's not always the right journey for that person. And I know you started a leadership academy training program, I believe, that you started working on, and we're doing something. It's like, let's make sure that you have the true competencies to go in this area, right? Like, do you really have those to move into those levels? You go from technician to manager to maybe senior leader. Those all take different skills and different characteristics, and be able to identify, what do I need to see from a frontline employee to give me the idea that they have the characteristics to be a manager? And then what do I have from a manager characteristics to make sure I really understand that they have the potential to become a senior leader, right? Because they're different. They are. As much as we want to just see people scale up real fast, right? That growth. And sometimes our businesses really do grow faster than even ourselves. I mean, we could say that of Chad. I know, I've been pretty transparent that sometimes our businesses are scaling fast, that we're trying to catch up on how to lead and manage the business, nor less our frontline management or senior management team, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think that you mentioned the Leadership Academy. I appreciate that. That has been one of the things that I've kind of used as a helper in my identifying future leaders. That's actually what one of the programs that we have is called, where I'm speaking at 6 a.m. on Friday. At the end, everybody in the company is invited to come, and I'm just talking about something I've read or something like that. I have a huge folder of notes and stuff like that I pull from. But to me, that's as you said, trying to identify these people. It's sometimes tough. Hey, they're out in their truck, you don't see them. It's like, oh, I didn't even realize he had those skills. Where I use that program as kind of well, if you show up to this, that would be a good first start.
Mm-hmm.
And so, those are my people that listen to this. Hey, there's a free tip. If you want, I mean, showing up is half the battle.
100%.
Are you listening? Are you trying to grow? Are you trying to get better? Which I think is important. We talked a little bit about trying to find people that fit and can grow with the company. You said you've hired what, four ops manager and maybe 3 or 4 frontline
Yeah,
managers
frontline
in the
managers.
last
Uh-huh.
60 days. What and we talked a little bit about myself screwing up the process of selecting the wrong person. What kind of system did you guys put in place to find those people, to try to get the right person in place? Was there any sort of interviewing techniques or questions or like profiles you were trying to feel? What did that look
Yeah.
like for you
I mean, I
guys?
think we really took the one score, like as a piece of it, really identifying the one score program. How do they score in the competencies of this role? We did really dive into color code really hard this time, to really understanding the color code based upon what we're asking out of this role. Does it actually fit your core personality in a color code? Like, right. And then we also back that up with this. So we really use like this fundamental, trying to get the core understanding of this person. I'm not saying everything is judged on those things, by the way, but they're a good piece to really say, all right, if this role is really about being somebody that's a leader and a driver and all these things, and their number one color code is white, probably not going to work out well for them or for the rest of the people around them, because white would say, hey, I'm more at harmony and I don't like to make decisions. I want other people to tell me what to do. Like, this is a decision driven role and you're comfortable in that seat, right? Doing that. So I think we really try to dig into that a little bit more than we have in the past, besides just say, oh, hey, you've been doing a fantastic job and you've worked here in X, Y, and Z, kind of like you probably did, right? Just making kind of handpicking people out of the crowd, like, right? And just say, why don't you come give this a shot, or asking them, right? And then we also took the mindset of, more than ever, is like, you do not need to be from this industry at all. Like, zero. We're not going to make that a requirement as much as we probably used to do when we were smaller, because we're like, oh, we want people to know how to do this stuff, right? Because you needed people to know how to do it. Now hopefully we have enough people to know how to do that, right? And do that well. Is that was not a requirement that we really peeled back from in the past. Like, we've probably been really hard on like wanting to have people that were somewhat in the industry itself. Like, you did not have to be in plumbing or HVAC or the home service industry at all. We just wanted to understand that you truly know how to lead and manage and hold people accountable, and that, and then these characteristics exist from the standpoint of like, or do you have a consistent behavior? How do you respond to things we send you already? We've sent projects. We like to send little projects to people and say, hey, especially to higher roles, like, hey, analyze this data and then give us a quick report back on what you see and what actions you would take, right? To really get them to think longer scale. Because a lot of times what we see is people are very much were single mind thinking within one day or maybe a month at best. If you want leaders in your organization, you have to be thought leaders, and thought leaders think in quarters and years, right? So we wanted to really find out, like, in these new positions as we hire, how do they think? Are they thinking only right here, or can they think in a longer term? So hopefully that answers some of the question of some of the things that we dove into. And then we did 2 rounds of, solid interviewing and some board, like, people get together and collaborate a little bit more on the role as we hire.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you hit on a tremendous point there that I think others can learn from. And it took me a long time to figure this out. Actually, last Wednesday, I think was my 10-year anniversary here at the company, full-time worker. And it probably took me 8 to realize that we can hire somebody from outside the industry, let alone I don't know how to fix anything. So it's like, hey, look in the mirror, silly. Figure it out. But no, I think you're 100% right, and we have had some tremendous success. I know you've brought in, Elliot there at your,
Mhm.
who would have ever thought, oh yeah, let's plug him into our business and then look at the value that he brings. And we've just had a whole lot of success of bringing different perspectives into this business that can put a new set of eyes on something and go, hey, I don't know how you guys did it before, but like, why don't we do it like this? Whereas that idea would have never in a million years been brought up. Are there things that they may not be privy to, the technical side of things? Yes. But I'm fairly confident if you select the right person, they can probably figure out how to get whoever it is that they need the answer and win over
Yeah.
the team at the same time to say, hey, I don't have all the answers, but I'm going to find you the answer and I'm going to find it too fast for you. And I think if you can really cement that as a new leader in this industry, I think there's a ton of upside into what we're doing.
Yeah, I mean, we just sit here and think like, you mentioned Elliot, who's our CTO. As companies get bigger, you start to have these positions that, people probably are familiar with. But, he came over from Limited Brands of Victoria's Secret, right? We have a continuous improvement manager. She has a black belt in Lean Six Sigma. She came from Granger and Nationwide Insurance. So we started to bring people in in these other roles that are not, our marketing manager. She came from Ryan Partnership, which was a large marketing firm, right? So they're not trade specific, I guess, or home service. They understand like this from a holistic picture, and they bring new insight. Like the things that our continuous improvement manager that I didn't even expect was like she has so much insight into large call centers to like things I've never even heard us talk about in Nexstar that she brings. Like, wow, that's like the way we think about service levels and the way we think about different areas of tracking and reporting and doing things now inside of our call center. Not to take anything away from Nexstar, it's just a different level because they're running call centers of thousands and thousands of people, right? Like, so it's just being able to have this other insight. You think about two people, Mike, who came from Victoria's Secret and Limited Brands too, like publicly traded company, like they had to do long forecasting, and Elliot did data science and finance background. So they bring new ways to really think about that. And then we bring our expertise of what we do today, right? So it's not taking anything away from the field technician that does the call every day or the service or the dispatcher. It's just it builds a great bridge. How about that, for lack of a better way? And you really get to see things in a different level once you start to bring those teams together. So I guess I would say if anybody's listening to this podcast, it's like be comfortable doing that. Even on maybe a smaller, maybe not the same size as ours or even bigger, whatever, I think, for people to understand, we're over, 30 million, Chad. I think you're around like 45 or something, right? In that area. Even if you're still down at, when I say still down, I don't want to come off the wrong way there, but even if you're still getting started and you're 4 or 5 million and you're really saying, oh, I got to have a service manager, I got to have somebody has, I would say, I wish I would have took the leap a little bit earlier in that area because it would have brought some other insight to the team that would have been valuable. Not to take anything away from the team members you have, but I think you really see people that are a different trade line. What I mean by this is being a manager is its own trade line, right? It's its own trade, right? Being a plumber, HVAC tech, or electrician is a trade. Being a manager is a trade. It just is a trade. It's its own trade. It's its own craft.
Yeah, awesome stuff there. You touched on a number of things that I would 100% agree with you. And I think it really comes back to, kind of what you said at the beginning there of getting clear on where you want to go, work the model. Jared, I think we got a title for the podcast. But it all ties back to, as you as the leader have to set the vision and understand where you want to go. If you want to hang out at where you're at right now and not really grow all that much and do whatever, well, then don't build a business to grow or scale. But if you want to grow and scale, then I think what you just talked about of finding these people who are outside our industry and find the person that you may need quote unquote 2 to 3 years from now in your plan and get them on your team. The best investment that you can make is in the people that you have on your team. It's finding those that have these great ideas and want to push the organization forward. Well, getting those people on your team is critical in moving forward. Jared, who helps me produce well, he didn't help me produce the podcast. I don't do anything but talk, but he produces the podcast. Jared's been with us now for 3 years. And I still remember the look on my dad's face when I said that I hired somebody to shoot video all day. But I knew that where we were going and what we wanted to do, and that, having Jared on the team a few years before everyone else said we needed them has been a tremendous thing for us. We've been able to produce far more things than we would have ever thought possible as far as content goes. And that's just one example, and you had tons of examples too. When Elliot and Mike joined your team, I'm sure there were some people that thought you were probably pretty crazy. Or one, what's Mike doing? And two, like, why do you need someone to analyze data? Like, what are you talking about? Like, we run service calls.
Yeah. It is. And you have to be, I think that's, again, being a thought leader, right? You have to be able to see foresight into the future of where you want to go. And I think you brought up a good point there. It's like, make a decision of what your vision is and then do that. So if it is to be a vision of, I don't want to grow past this, and this is what we are, then clearly hire people that operate that business at that level and realize that and be okay with that. And then if it isn't, then go ahead and start investing into, bringing roles on, because I want to make sure it's clear that in this podcast that we're not saying that the team that we have is not good enough, because that is not the case. I want to make sure that's clear.
For sure.
The point that we're saying here is bringing other people onto the team that help bring value to that team, to the rest of your team members, as much as the team members bring value to them. And that's, I think, what we need to really understand is, like, getting everybody to come in and then build that cohesive team together it's not going to be easy, by the way. And it's still not easy. And Chad can vouch for that. And anybody else I know that we talked to, and we talked to Tommy over A1 Garage Doors, and they're blowing up, but he's got that child, right? We talked to our peers at other locations. It's never going to be easy. So don't think it's easy, by the way. But at the same time, like, it will help make it life easier as you move forward. As your point here is, like, you got Jared on. Yeah, it might have been at the time a little, hey, what's this, what's that? But as you knew where you wanted to go, all of it has fallen in place now because you were able to work through that together. So I think it's just bridging that gap, bringing the team together, bringing the right talent in to help support all the players on the team. And that's what it's all about. That's literally what it's about. Once you can figure that out, you can really, take off. You do.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think one last thing that I'll throw on that, and then we'll move to something else, is that, while it may seem that bringing on someone from outside the industry, like, the gap is really wide, I would contend that the gap is actually closer, because those who don't come in with a bunch of preconceived notions about the industry ask a heck of a lot more questions. And ultimately, it ends up helping the whole organization, because in my mind, one of the biggest challenges we have when it comes to building culture and, leading effectively is that 2/3 of our workforce is out in a van by themselves. They're not in the office. And there's a lot of stuff that crosses that chasm from the field to the office and back and forth that gets overlooked, because those in the office say, well, they should just all do it like that. Well, not exactly. Let's look at it from a different perspective, and maybe we need to readjust our process or procedure to help them out in the field on the front lines. And I have seen that with people who come from, not to say that people inside the industry don't ask those questions, but people that have come from outside the industry always pose these questions, and we're like, never thought about it like that. Like, well, yeah, it isn't going to work. Okay, that sounds great. But I don't know if you've seen that as well in your organization, as far as the questions that they ask, and they kind of pull that gap closer together, I feel like sometimes.
Yeah. And I think they make you, challenge your own concept, right? Or make you think about something again. Even if it's right or wrong, you have to think about it again and answer the question and explain why you're at the point you are, right? And then that makes you question maybe why you're doing something, or maybe you've been doing something for a long time and you rethink and you're like, oh God, this is dumb. Why are we still doing that? Right. Which I think we've all done. or it validates something that you're doing too, to remind you that, hey, we are doing this very well. So I would agree. I think we're seeing more of that as we're moving forward and getting more people engaged and asking questions. And it's really made us explain our business to ourselves more. And I think, as most people know, the more you can teach, the more you learn, right? So as you're teaching your business to other people and other people that are in the business, teaching it to people coming on and do stuff, the more you actually learn, and you're vulnerable in that. If you're vulnerable with that, you will learn a lot. And I think that's an ego thing. And I mean, we all have that, Chad. We've talked a little bit about ego one time before too, a little bit, but it's a little bit of ego, but you got to be vulnerable and ask those questions. And at the end of the day, like, whatever's the best thing for the company is really all that matters.
For sure. Absolutely. Well, I want to talk here last but not least about your school, about what you got going on. I know we're going to be, you and I are both talking on a panel at the super meeting here coming up in about a month or
Yeah.
month's time here at down in Marco Island, which will be a lot of fun seeing everybody and catching up. But tell us a little bit about your school, kind of culture building. We'll kind of end on as we near kind of the hour. We'll kind of end on that piece.
Yeah, absolutely. So first off, I mean, I've thanked you, but I want to thank you on here too. I appreciate you helping us facilitate and get this school up off the ground, by the way. You guys, Chad, inviting us out, letting us see what you're doing, sharing so much of the work that your team put in with us to help us get up off the ground and get going is like greatly appreciated, man. Like I can't thank you enough. So thank you. And I know
Absolutely.
Chad's always like one of the guys that just shares. I had to say the other day to you, I said, I feel like I've been taking more than I've been sharing with you, Chad. Whenever I said that to you the other day, you say, oh, it'll come back around. And it does. And I think we've shared stuff but recently you've shared a lot of great things with me. So first off, I just want to say thank you again for that. All right. It's been great. We
Absolutely.
learned a lot from going out there, and then our team came together and it's been awesome. I mean, we've really built the Eco University, we call it. It's taken on its own like being, right? It's literally its own location, its own building. It has a dean. We hired a dean. We call him the dean. He has a military background, like 20 years in military as a sergeant major. He had like 15 years in the school district. So he's got like that overall, like he's get the teaching part, but he's also still got like the drill sergeant thing going on. So people like enjoy it, but fear it a little bit,
Yeah.
so it's been good structure. And then we take, one of our like senior technician, we had right now we have one of our QCs, quality control guys, is going over and doing all the hands-on training there. So that's been great to be able to really get in the lab and build a lab out. So it's about a 5,000 square foot building. It's got portal training from Next Tech. So we thank Nexstar also, right? Nexstar has also driven a lot of this for us. So thank you, Nexstar, for investing in this program and then letting us all jump in and share and learn off of it. So that's been it. So they do lab work. They'll do portal work and lab work one day, and then they ride the next day. And that goes on every other day. Right now, we have 20 students in the program that have zero experience in the trades. Zero experience. They just started 2 weeks ago. It is our first class that we would not consider a hybrid class, where we have some of our people that have been on our team for a little bit that were still young and people that were very green. This is the first class that will be 20 students graduating in December, and 16, we do it 14 to 16 weeks, and they will get trucks. There's trucks waiting. They'll be sitting out there waiting. So this is a great opportunity really for us to bring people into the trades that have not. We all know there's a shortage in the trades. Like, that's been no secret for a long time. It's a great way to build a culture inside it, because you're getting them really build the culture with them from the beginning. We do a lot of stuff. It's not just all technical plumbing work. We meet with them. We have eco way meetings. We have a service system come in and do stuff. I meet with them and come over and talk about the culture, do stuff. We have our our core values up, and we go through all the core values stuff. We go through our mission statement. We have a orientation meeting where we talk about it. We have meetings along the way where we discuss the culture and the things that we want to build and look like. And then we have a great graduation celebration at the end where we bring everybody, all the trainers, everybody together and really celebrate this. Because one thing I've noticed, and Chad, you might with yours too, is like most of us in the trades, different, but most of us getting into trades don't really have any formal education or don't have anything that they can say, man, I really can hold this up and hang on this and say, I did this, right? Like, I did this. And they have 14 weeks, 16 weeks. They have to pass tests. They got to do all this work. They got to put the time. They got to be there at the end. Like, you got to celebrate that with them and make them feel because they did earn it. that they have something they can hang up and be proud of, and to start their career with. So we've seen success with that, and we look forward to it. I mean, right now we're going to have we're going to put 20 trucks on the road in December. My goal is every 16 weeks to pump out 20 new plumbers and maybe HVAC. I'll let you know.
Yeah. That's awesome stuff. Exciting. I appreciate the compliment. You know, a lot of people helped us get ours off the ground. So happy to share any insight that I have. And I think there's a bigger piece of this whole thing. You know, two guys in the Midwest from Indy to Columbus, which is not that far of a drive. We've got 17 kids in ours that just started last Monday.
Awesome.
Last Monday. Yeah, last Monday. My weeks are coming all
Yeah,
together.
I think we're pretty much on the same. Well, we have the same curriculum basically, right? So we're pretty much on the same rhythm.
Yeah. So you know that is, and you're 20. That makes 37 brand new people to our trade. And
Yes.
I think it just goes to show you that the commitment to going out and building these people, the more that we in the trades can band together and create more of these schools all across the country, the better. That's how we improve our industry. It's not by continually complaining and sitting on our hands going, oh, well, we can't find any good people, or we would, or whatever it is. Like, just stop it. Just stop doing that. It is hard work, but I'm here to tell you, there's two people right here that would be more than happy to help you if that is something you are truly passionate about. And I think it's something that we both are passionate about. One of the things, and I know I've talked to you about this, but one of the things that I get the most satisfaction is of you mentioned holding up the diploma or certificate or whatever you want to call it. But one of the things in very similar vein is I was part of the hiring process on not this past class but the class before, and the look on people's face when you said they were accepted into the program, that was worth everything, to know that you had literally had a part in hopefully changing someone's life for the better. Trades may be looked at as dirty work, but there's a lot of people out there that are trying to do some really cool things. And I think that hopefully the trade is better off for it, for sure. So thank you for your commitment to doing that. I think that hopefully we're pushing the trade in the right direction.
I believe we are. And I mean, you've maybe heard me say this many times, like, plumbing/trades saved my life. What I mean by that, it gave me something to go to work for, gave me an opportunity. It believed in me, and I think it's our responsibility to believe in it back, right? So as you grow and you get in a position financially, instead of taking the money and, not to say you shouldn't buy stuff and enjoy life, but give it back to the trade, right? Give back, grow the trade. It's your business. At the same time, it's the trade that's given us an opportunity, whether Chad, it's you to get into it, your father in the trades, right? Growing, like, it's given us something, right? And I think it's part of your responsibility to give back to it and grow it and treat it as the way we really want it to be, right? As we look at our generation, I know I'm a little bit older than you, Chad, so okay, we're a little off there, but but as we think about, as we transition through, our, the older generation of the trades, which laid the foundation for how to do the work, what to do, as we look into what does the trade still need and what kind of people need to be in the trades to keep it up and growing and keep a high standard of it. Like, that's our responsibility now to carry that, right? And carry that torch, right, to move forward. So I look forward to growing and doing more with this. And I agree, like, we need to build more schools around the country, and we need more people that own businesses that are willing to invest. It's an investment. It costs money. Like, that's the bottom line. Like, we have 20 people we're paying to go to school for 16 weeks, right? Like, earn and learn at the same time. So you have to be up for that and realize that some of them aren't going to work out, and you have to understand that too. But the greater good, and if you do it right, it will pay its dividends. As you said, don't sit around and complain about stuff. Let's find solutions. And the way to do that is by investing in the schools, investing in the training programs, and investing in the trades, and being the owner on the forefront. I've seen videos of you, Chad, and talk to you. You're there shaking their hands when they graduate, right? I do the same thing. We take a picture with every single person that graduates, like showing that you're just as committed as the CEO, the owner of your organization, as much as you want your team to be committed. You need to also be committed. And I'm not saying depending on the size of the place, you can be at everything all the time, but you need to show that you're committed to this program.
Absolutely. And I couldn't think of a better way to kind of round out the episode as we near the hour. But, as I think back on what we've talked about, and I'm excited to share this episode with the listeners, I think there's so many nuggets in here of good practice and things that can help you grow your business. I think, as we talked about it a couple of times, is just get clear on where you want to go. Get clear on the impact that you want to make with your business. And everybody has a different one of those. Your vision is going to be different than mine, is going to be different than Aaron's, is going to be different than whose ever, and that's okay. But you're doing yourself a disservice if you don't take the time to get clear on it, and then share it with your people. You will be amazed at how hard your people will work to help achieve what is ultimately your vision. Yes, you may get input from them. Yes, you may get this, that, and the other. But at the end of the day, this is really your dreams of what you want to turn it into. And your company has the power to do that if you, as Aaron said, invest, give back, work to develop the people within your company, and you can create some amazing things. And sometimes it's that little push. Hopefully that little push may be this episode. If you're kind of coming up on this year as we enter September, it's always budgeting season. Everyone's favorite time of year for 2022. As you near, the one thing I always start with before I ever start budgeting is I look back at what the vision for the company is. Are there any tweaks that we needed to make to it? Have we went in a direction that we maybe shouldn't have gone in, that we need to stop going in? Or is there a direction that we went in that we, could possibly explore some more and exploit as a potential opportunity? So again, Aaron, thanks for your time. I know you're busy. I'll see you here in about a month. I'm sure I'll talk to you before then. But listeners, this is definitely one. Hopefully, I know you got something out of it. And as we said at the end, go help somebody. Go share this with somebody that may need it and give them a helping hand. So thanks again, Aaron. I appreciate it.